The theme for January 2021 is Timeless Wisdom, Evolutionary Vision. The topic for today is Grounded in the One. Ernest Holmes wrote in What Religious Science Teaches, the sacred books of all peoples declare that God is one, a unity from which nothing can be excluded and to which nothing can be added. And Ernest Holmes wrote in Think Your Troubles Away, the prophets of every age have declared the unity of God and man, but they have been among those who have entered in. Dare we deny the reality of their experience, the truth of their message? Our perfect union with the one life is affirmed in the Bible in the book of John, chapter 10, verse 30. I and the Father are one. Please join me and say with conviction, today I am forever one with all life. I now turn this back over to Reverend Dr. Kathleen Johnson.
Thank you, Marcy. So, as we do every time this year in January, we go back to the basic teachings. And I always hope to add something to that for those of us who have gone through this so many times. Because the truth is we can ever expand in our understanding of these principles called oneness because of our evolutionary nature, our ability to expand our awareness of what oneness is and then how to put it into practice in our lives. I'd like to begin with a story about a great poet from the 15th century in India. His name was Kabir. His teachings were so universal that the Muslims and the Hindus claim him as their own. To me, he so much exemplifies the same kind of energy and perspective of the poet Rumi, and many of us are aware of the poet Rumi and his beautiful love poems to the divine. Kabir did the same thing. He gave himself fully to God. And then he wrote this. He said, "The beloved Lord possesses my heart and has enchanted me." Oh, gosh, yes, so beautiful. He embodied, he became, he unified, he realized or awakened to his oneness with all that is, the presence of God. And he therefore not only became that, but it so overtook who he was that he could not help himself but contribute to the culture around him. At that time, the Muslims and the Hindus were in constant battle, despised each other, killed each other in the name of God. And his response to that was to go and to teach them, and to get them to work together in harmony. A very powerful presence. And his teachings were very clear. He said, to know ecstasy, to know God's beauty, to know God's love, to get along with others, your heart must be immaculate, free of all hatred and judgment. In other words, he said, my Lord loves a pure heart. My Lord loves a pure heart. And for him, the Lord meant the presence of love. He said, love is so pure that only a pure heart can sustain the experience of it. And how beautiful, Deb, that you chose the song that you did today. I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you. I thank you, I love you. The Ho'oponopono, which is a song of forgiveness. A forgiveness that peels away the judgment and peels away the hatred and the resentment that keeps our heart from fully containing this amazing thing called divine love. So I started with that story because I think it helps all of us get more in touch with what it means to live from a place of oneness consciousness. And, Ernest Holmes was a great student of all the spiritual traditions, all of them. A great student of that, self-study. And he was one who looked for the common themes, the common spiritual principles, the common truth that runs through all of them. And of course, this is the mystical, we call it the mystical perspective from all of the different world religions, because when you get the mystics together, they find commonality. We know this. We've seen it in books written by Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama and others who, when they join together and they have conversations, yeah, sure, there are differences here and there, but love is something they can all agree on. Oneness is something they can all agree on. So Holmes invites us then to do what he did. Read sacred texts from all the spiritual traditions. Read sacred inspired readings and poetry from all times. Read quantum theory. He was really big into the sciences. That's why he came up with the idea of the science of mind, meaning the mind of God. The science or the principles of the mind, universal mind, which we are unified with. He also encouraged us to read psychology, modern psychology, and all of the new findings that are coming through. So we're considered a teaching that is open at the top, that we're always continually enriching ourselves with information that, of course, we know always helps us on our spiritual path of oneness. And then he says this, and this is a very important piece, is prove the principle. Don't just read about it and become an intellectual who knows all this stuff. Apply it. Put it into practice. He says, prove the principle. Prove it. And so he asks all of us to do the same. This is not a founder who said, I'm better than you. He very much, like Jesus said, these things I can do and greater things you can do as well. He has that perspective that things will move on beyond what he learned in his day and what he gleaned from his meditation practice. And Holmes, again, found a universal truth that I just mentioned previously. One power, one life, one source, one presence, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. That means present everywhere in its totality, in its fullness, right here where I am, right where you are, right where we all are. And that therefore we are co-creators. We have that natural creative ability that we're gifted with from the very beginning. And so our teaching is really about awakening to all of this truth and embodying it, just as Kabir did and Jesus did and all of the great saints and sages of all time. See, the CSL, Centers for Spiritual Living, that we're part of, that have a beautiful global vision. And in this global vision, it said, we see a world where all life is seen as sacred expressions of the one divine. Our evolutionary vision for humanity is a world where people live in alignment with the truth of oneness. Love and compassion, which go hand in hand with oneness, is what Kabir so beautifully demonstrated when he was speaking about how he gave himself to God and that God possesses my heart and has enchanted me. That's such a beautiful, poetic way of stating what oneness is and what love, where love and compassion comes from, that state of unity. So this is why we keep returning to oneness over and over again. It's not only the truth, but there's another reason. Because the consequences of ignorance of this truth are what shows up in all that ails us individually and our nation and our world and our beloved Mother Earth. It is that which is the opposite of oneness, a belief in separation. And I'm going to go into that a little more later in this message. Jesus gives us a clear path, just as Kabir does, to how to enter into this thing called oneness consciousness. It goes like this, and many of you have heard this. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all else shall be added. You know, the more that I grow in my own consciousness, the more I see how important that statement is to my own journey. Seek first the kingdom, and all else shall be added. The kingdom is where? It's within us. The kingdom of God, Jesus said the kingdom of God is within. The kingdom of heaven is within. Heaven is a state of consciousness. It's a state of oneness consciousness where there's no separation. And so love and compassion are natural in that state. And it reminded me of a song that I heard by Ricky Byers-Beckwith that goes like this. It says, I used to think that I needed somebody, or I needed some money, or I needed whatever, something outside myself. But all I needed was my connection with God. And it goes on to say, one day I realized to seek first the kingdom, all things and everything be added unto me. And now, then she talks about, and now I have fellowship and I have all the good that I've been seeking because I sought first the kingdom, the presence of God within, a connection, that state of oneness consciousness. In the scriptures, the prophet Isaiah once said, God is doing a new thing. He said, now it springs forth, this new thing springs forth. Do you not perceive it? And then he goes on to say, I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. That's Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19. The great mystics of all time, like Isaiah, spoke in using symbology, the idea of making a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert that really spoke to the people. And we know that imagery speaks to our deep subconscious mind. Think of that as you meditate, as you do your prayer work, as you do your visioning practice, that you are opening a way for the rivers in the desert, in desert consciousness, separation consciousness, a way in the wilderness of separation consciousness, a way back to oneness and back to living that state of heaven here on this planet, which is a state of mind. Kabir, again, was such a great example of that, in that he became that way in the wilderness, that river in the desert for the Muslims and the Hindus of his time. And so all of us have that potentiality and possibility, because Spirit is always calling us. I don't know if you can hear the call, but I feel it and I hear it, to be the place through which the new thing unfolds, the new version of ourselves, the new thing, this thing that we call heaven on earth, a world that works for all. And the practice of forgiveness. I really want to be sure that we remember this, because it's so easy to get caught up in wanting to get even when we see things on the news that we don't like. And we know that that's not the direction that we want to go. And yet we know we want to make a difference. So here's what I'm going to offer you. We know that forgiveness is letting go of the poison of the victim story. You know, that I'm a victim and they done me wrong, and so I'm going to get even. We know that the harm that can be done by emotions of revenge, we saw it on Wednesday on TV, when anger is used in a destructive way. So forgiveness is a way that we purify our hearts so that God can do the new thing, the thing that is going to be beneficial to all through us. It returns us to the truth of oneness, love, and compassion. It frees us from judgment and condemnation and allows us to sustain that thing called divine love. But it does not mean that we condone behavior that is destructive. It means that we come up with a solution, that which is good and right, some consequences for the destructive behavior, so that there is an opportunity for the purpose of learning. And other parts of the world have seen this as a new possibility for their prisons. I know I saw something on a documentary at one point in time that was it was a prison somewhere in Europe where they were rehabilitating, and it was more like a group home for prisoners to learn new skills, to learn new ways of thinking. So this is not about punishment, it's about consequences that help give the person an opportunity to learn from their the destructiveness of their actions. Forgiveness is actually letting go of the story of separation from God. And it's the use of our anger for right action. I don't know how many of you know, how many of you have seen Valerie Kaur. It's Kaur. She's a beautiful, young, and very mystical and powerful speaker from the Sikh tradition. Some of you have heard it called Sikh, the Sikh tradition. And she says this about anger. She said you can use it destructively or constructively. Destructive anger is when we seek revenge and seek to harm. And divine anger is when we seek a positive solution. Gandhi and King, I think, so beautifully in this season for nonviolence that begins this month and ends in April, these two are such great examples of the use of divine anger in the form of nonviolent protest. And yes, it can seem like it's slow in getting things moving and changed, but we know that ultimately it is a much more powerful vehicle, as so beautifully exemplified by Gandhi, where he was able to shift a whole nation, the whole nation of India, from the British power to self-governance by the Indian people. So it's a powerful vehicle that comes from love. Yes, divine anger. The anger is there, but it's being used constructively. And now I want to talk about rooting or grounding in this presence of the one through changing the story. Llewellyn Von Lee, I actually did a series of talks on him some time ago when we were talking about the earth, our relationship with the earth. And he says the only way to change the world is to change the story. We know this, right? Change the story. But not only our own individual stories, but the collective story that humanity tells itself, because we know that the story that we tell ourselves define our world today. It defines it. So right now, the predominant story, or the story that has been holding on for quite a long time, is a tale of consumerism. sustained by the empty promise of an endless stream of stuff. And that stuff includes not only things, more and more things and possessions, but it includes fame, power, all of those things, thinking that there's something outside of ourselves that is going to make us feel happy. So thinking that stuff is the source of happiness is the story that has been told for so long and continues to be promoted. And many of us are finally recognizing the self-destructive madness of this myth. We know that it's addictive, more and more stuff, because it seems like we get this temporary boost of happiness, and then we want more, and then we want more. And it not only is addictive, but it exploits us. We're exploited by, the whole big story of more. We need more in order to have value or worth or whatever. And it exploits our planet. We've seen the destructiveness that takes place on our planet. We're seeing how there are new innovators who are doing all that they can to clean up the plastic from the ocean and to clean up our lands and our waters and our air. So we know that the effects of this that ravages our ecosystem, this story. And even a green economy won't work as long as we're covering over the truth of unsustainable materialism and the waste that comes from that. We have truly, over time, and I don't want to claim this, but I'm saying our culture has become addicted to materialism as a way of life. This story is built on an earlier story. It's built on the story of a God who is withdrawn up to heaven somewhere to reign apart and above us. This myth of separation, that we are separate from God and therefore separate from our earth, rather than part of our wholeness, has led to seeing the natural world in a very unfeeling way, therefore leading to exploitation and misuse of the planet. And many of us long for and have been already telling ourselves this new story. This new story that is not so much of a new story, but for many who have been involved in the old story of materialism and separation, this feels like a new story because we know that this is what's necessary to save our planet. It's not just actions, it's a change of consciousness, a change of the story. Our Science of Mind teachings, the Centers for Spiritual Living that we are part of, promotes new story and has been promoting this new story for quite some time. And so it's articulated in this way. It's a beautiful, compelling vision of the entire universe as a single, inextricably interconnected living whole, returning to us a sense of wonder that nourishes our body and our soul. This new story is also based on an earlier story, but it's based on the story of the indigenous peoples of the world, one in which all of creation is sacred and where humanity is a part of the woven tapestry of life. This newly emerging version, or the newly emerging version of this story, also has the evolutionary component to it that's drawn from the insights of particle physics. The underlying nature of creation, which is an interconnected whole. And like Indra's net, each part influences the rest. This is such good news because it's a reminder that when we do our spiritual practice, when we follow our path from separation to oneness, consciousness, that we are doing a vital part for the whole. And this new story of creation connects the smallest particle with an ever-expanding cosmos of billions of galaxies. It bridges science and the sacred, understanding all of it as expressions of the same ultimate reality. This new story is a story of oneness then. And it includes the diversity of creation in a self-sustaining whole. We can sense a reemergence of this idea of oneness when we talk about our earth as Mother Earth or as Gaia, understanding that, yes, the earth is a living thing as well, that balances itself, and that we can support that as part of the earth. And this story, because we have this impulse to evolve, it's there. It's a God-given impulse in all of us, despite how it appears sometimes in the world scene. This impulse to evolve is operating deep in the psyche of humanity, even as I speak, to give birth, to give full birth to this story of oneness. We hear it in the words of the new president, President Biden, when he says that we need to work together, when he's calling us into a state of unity. It's the story of cooperation rather than competition or conflict. It's the story of life evolving and recreating itself anew. And yet, as full participants in creation, we are needed, you and I are needed to midwife this new story by living it, by showing up as Kabir did, as Jesus did, as all the great sages and saints did, as representatives of oneness, love, compassion on this planet. So the world is calling to those of us who are awake to this inner dimension, who can make the connection between the worlds, between that state of heavenly consciousness, oneness, and heaven on earth. So I'd like us to end this message today with recommitting ourselves to resolve to evolve, not only for the good of ourselves, but for the good of our planet, to be midwives to this new story of oneness. And so let us do a spiritual practice right now from the Heart Math Institute. It's one that we can do at any point in time that will continue to bring us back to that state of oneness. And grounding, of course, means bringing it all the way through the body. That awareness of oneness all the way into the body, not just in the mind, but all the way into the body. And this particular practice, which is called heart-focused breathing coherence technique, the long name of it, breathing through the heart, is a very powerful, spiritually grounding technique. And of course, it's dealing with the heart, purifying the heart. So I invite you to close your eyes or open your eyes. Actually, you can do this open eyes or closed eyes. And I invite you to, in this moment, take a deep breath and focus your attention in the area of the heart and imagining breath flowing in and out of your heart. So as you breathe, just breathing in and out of the heart, as if the heart had a nose or a mouth and could breathe. Notice that your breathing is getting a little slower and a little deeper as you focus on it. And find an easy rhythm that's comfortable for you. Think of someone that can benefit from your caring and your compassion. and breathe compassion. Feel compassion for them in your heart. Radiate the feeling, filling your mental atmosphere and personal space. Be open to the heart's intelligence. Be open to the expansive nature of the universe, of which you are very much unified with. And in that place of expansive receptivity, I speak this word of truth. We're praying now. Let's pray together. Through this unity, this state of oneness with the one infinite universal mind of God, this beautiful awareness of our divine union, our inseparable union with the whole, I affirm and declare that the fullness, the omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience of the one life is right here where I am, right here where each of us is. Each of us beautiful, clear, purified representatives of the one cosmic heart of love and compassion. Knowing that each one of us, and individually and all of us collectively, are in this here now moment making a profound and powerful difference in human consciousness as we together fully embrace and realize who we are in truth. The great one, the divine I am, here as the very presence of love, knowing that love fills our thought world, our emotional world, and our physical activity. Knowing that, yes, even those emotions like anger are used by this love energy as motivating power and extra energy to accomplish the things that we are here to accomplish, to bring forth those qualities of heaven on earth, which includes social justice and racial justice, equality. A world that works truly for all, heaven on earth. I'm knowing even in this now moment, we are each inspired, knowing at a very deep level what is ours to do to participate in the birthing, the midwiving of this new story, which is truth, the truth of oneness. Knowing that this is now, this idea of oneness, this truth of oneness is now growing exponentially in human consciousness and is showing up all over the place, realizing that as the old structures of separation break down, that we are giving birth more fully. There's a breakthrough happening even now as I speak into the new, this newness of oneness consciousness, which is our truth, has been our truth all along, and yet now more fully realized. So I give my thanks for our vital part in this midwifing process, the beautiful pure hearts of our community and of all those who join us. And I release this word right here and right now into the universal mind of God. And I invite us all, therefore, to declare our agreement with this with a powerful yes. And so it is. Thank you. Namaste, my friends. And so now